Good evening, everybody. I call this meeting to order at 5:32. Roll call, please.
Councilman Heyman,
Present.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Present.
Councilman Blades.
Present.
3 present, we have a quorum.
Next item, approval of agenda.
If I may, Mayor and council members, there are two items that staff has, which we would like you to take action on. Under the Brown Act, if information becomes available after the posting of the agenda, and if the circumstances do not allow waiting till the next council meeting, and if there is a matter of urgency or financial issue, the council can, by unanimous vote with the four of you, add an item to the agenda. The two items that I would like you to consider, and each will need a separate motion. The first one is, we have obtained some information on the Mojave Pistachio litigation, and Keith needs to talk to you on that matter. He's assuming that you vote to add the item. We cannot wait till the next meeting because there's some timelines for the case management conference, and he needs some direction from the council to do that. So that would be the first item, and we would just need a motion to add it to the agenda, a second, and a vote. And then we'll take the second item.
Apologies for walking in late. Tried to get here as quick as I could. I'm okay with adding, obviously, that, so I would entertain a motion for that approval
Motion to approve.
Second.
With the additions.
with the additions.
Well, there's one more.
This is the first
So,
edition for
this
the
is the first
closed
edition.
session.
We got one more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion for the closed session.
Okay.
Yep.
Roll call.
Councilman Heyman,
Aye.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
I'd also like to make a second motion for the item we
For the
see before us.
emergency item.
Yeah, but we need to have the findings on the record. The emergency item, again, it is information that staff came to staff's attention after the agenda has been posted, so we could not put it on the agenda. It is a item that deals with our water supply and water well in the park. It is an urgency item. We cannot wait till the next council meeting. So we ask that the council consider adding that item to the agenda anywhere in the action items.
It would be added as item number, I believe, I would add it as item number 6, in between numbers 5 and 6.
Okay.
Before ordinances during, secondary to the discussion action item 5, which is the base and approval for the splash pad. I would put it in between there. Have we agreed?
That'll work. Yep.
Do I have a motion as such?
You got a motion on the floor?
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyman,
Aye.
Councilmember Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilmember Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you for that, sir. We'll go ahead and now take any public comment on our closed session.
We should
And
now
we
vote
approve- And we have to approve the agenda
Right.
with the additions, correct, sorry. So we need to go ahead and have an approval of the agenda with the additions. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve with the additions.
I have a
Second.
motion. Do I have a second? Motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Heyman,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
And then we will go to public comment on our closed session. Is there any public comment on our one closed session item? Two closed sessions with the additional item. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn into closed session. We'll be coming out of closed session at, I'm going to guess, approximately 6:10 PM, just based on the time. For those that are listening, we will probably start between 6:10 and 6:15 PM. Thank you.
And the two items on the closed session agenda are potential litigation, one case, and existing litigation, Mojave Desert.
Mojave Pistachios.
Right.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you at 6:15. Dean, sorry for the delay in getting our council up. We had a couple things that we had to add to the agenda at the beginning, which got us into closed council a few minutes late. For everyone who's here, I just wanted to notify you that we did add 2 items to our agenda this evening. The first was a additional closed session item in regards to the legal matter with Mojave Pistachios. The second, we added item number 6, which is going to go and be, and ordinance will move from item number 6 to move number 7. And that's an emergency action item for repairs on our well that went down just here recently, that we need to repair our local water well, or we don't have water for our park. So that is an emergency item which was added under the Brown Act. So with that, I will call our meeting back into session and out of closed session, and we'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. Can I ask everyone to please stand? Mr. Reed, if you would lead us. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Councilor Rajaratnam, if you'd lead us in the invocation, please.
Please join me in prayer if you would. Lord, thank you for giving us this day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be on the council and serve this community. Lord, I pray for our country. Give your direction to the leaders of our country. Pray for our troops who are in harm's way. Pray for our police department who put their lives on line to make this community a safe place for us to live. Lord, bless each one of us here, and may our discussions go according to your will and to the benefit of this community. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.
Okay, first is going to be our attorney report out of closed session.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, council members, members of the public, council took up 2 items in closed session. On the Mojave Pistachio litigation, there was no reportable action taken. On the second item, council unanimously rejected a claim filed by State Farm on behalf of Valdivia.
Thank you, sir. Next item is we have one presentation to start with today. That is going to be our annual comprehensive financial report. Just so you guys know, we get to read this very cool audited report every year. About 100 plus pages. I think there was some commentary earlier today asking about how we get audited. We do get audited. It is not a self-audit, and we get a beautiful report. Anybody ever wants a copy of it? I've got plenty of copies hanging around. Shri.
Good evening, Council. So today we have our auditor, Coley Delaney, on the call, and he's going to go over a brief presentation about our fiscal year 23 annual comprehensive financial report, and then we will both be available for questions afterwards. So Coley, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Cherie. All right, cool. So you guys will be running the slides, is that right?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect, thanks. All right, well, as Cherie mentioned, my name is Coley Delaney. I am a partner with the Poon Group, and we were engaged on the City of Ridgecrest June 30, 2023 audit. So I have just a kind of a brief presentation for you. I'm going to go over some required communications under auditing standards, talk about some audit responsibilities, do a brief overview of the financial statements. I'll go over a couple key financial indicators and some pension and OPEB information, and then I'll share the audit results. Next slide. And you can go ahead and skip one more. All right, so these are some required communications, again, as I mentioned, required by generally accepted auditing standards. So regarding independence, we complied with all relevant requirements regarding independence, and that's for the firm as a whole, as well as for each individual who worked on the city's audit. So all of us were independent of the city. Regarding significant accounting policies, the city disclosed all those in Note 1 to the financial statements. And there were no significant GASB pronouncements that were implemented during this fiscal year. As far as significant estimates used within the financial statement, sometimes there's a fair value on investments. There's depreciable lives on capital assets is an estimate used. There's also actuarial assumptions built into both the calculation of the net pension liability, as well as the net other post-employment benefit or OPEB liability as well. Next slide. As far as sensitive disclosures in the financial statements, I know it is a large document, so these are some footnotes that we kind of just want to point out if you're just going to skim the document. Note 1, again, the summary of significant accounting policies. Note 11 details out information about the city's pension plans. Note 12 is the post-employment healthcare benefits. And note 13, it has other required disclosures kind of related to budget to actuals and expenditures in relation to appropriations, as well as negative net position or fund balance. And then note 14 is the classification of fund balances for governmental funds, which spells out the portions of fund balance that are essentially available to spend or are restricted or for use on other purposes. There were no uncorrected or corrected misstatements reported. And we did not. There were no consultations with other accountants regarding the audit. Next slide. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management, and we did not have any disagreements with management in terms of accounting treatments or audit procedures performed. So next slide, and then one more. All right, so these are management's responsibilities. So management is responsible for the financial statements. And they're responsible for presenting those financial statements in accordance with US GAAP. They're responsible for adopting sound accounting policies, as well as establishing and maintaining internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. They're also responsible for providing evidence to the auditors, supporting the amounts and the disclosures in the financial statements. And last but not least, management is responsible for preventing and detecting fraud. Next slide. Now, as the auditors, our responsibilities are to form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements are materially fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with US GAAP. We are required to plan and perform the audit to obtain a reasonable but not absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatements. And we do consider, we are required to consider internal control over financial reporting, but those considerations are really for the purpose of us doing our risk assessment and determining our audit procedures, and we don't actually provide assurance on the city's internal control. Next slide. Go one more. Okay, so these are just kind of a high-level overview of the city's financial statements. Here we have a condensed statement of net position, essentially the city's balance sheet as of June 30, 2023. The government-wide statements are broken down between governmental activities and business-type activities, and then we have the grand total for the entire city on the far right column. So we're going to take assets. We add assets and deferred outflows of resources, and then we subtract liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, and that's going to leave us with our total net position. So total net position ended for the governmental activities almost 64 million, business type activities almost 59 million, so grand total about 122 million total net position. So of that, the net investment in capital assets amount consists of 73.6 million. Consists of total capital assets, and that is minus outstanding capital related debt, which is actually zero for the city. And of the $7.9 million of restricted net position, 4.8 million of that is restricted for capital projects, and the remaining is restricted for special projects or other purposes. On the next slide, we will see the government-wide. This is essentially the income statement, so what we call the statement of activities. Again, at June 30, for the year ended June 30, 2023, total expenses for the city were about 54 million, and that includes again governmental and business type activities. We do total program revenues, charges for services, operating grants, capital grants, and contributions. Those summed up to 15.5 million. For a net cost of services. So keep that number in mind. Net cost of services for the governmental activities was a negative 29 million. Business type activities 8.5 million, and 38 million negative net cost of services for the city as a whole. Now, since the city is a governmental agency, we expect that those costs, the cost of those services, that net cost of services, will be made up by general revenues, which include taxes and includes miscellaneous income, as well as as well as investment income. So we did see this year a total a negative change in net position of, on the government-wide statements of about $12 million. There was a transfer from business type activities to the governmental activities of $2 million, and that was mainly for capital projects and debt service. Next slide. So here we have the condensed balance sheet for the general fund, but this one compares 2020, the current year and the prior year. So you can see that assets in the general fund increased by 2.6 million, and the liabilities and deferred inflows are pretty static. Overall, the fund balance in the general fund did change for the positive by 3 million. And again, here those categories of fund balance, which are also spelled out in note 14. To the financial statements. Non-spendable fund balance is the amount that is due from the city's fiduciary funds. Restricted fund balance is restricted by third parties or enabling legislation, and that mainly consists of restrictions for Prop 172 funds. The assigned fund balance of $7.2 million has remained the same, and that's for the use of Measure L funds, and the remaining fund balance is unassigned at June 30, 2023 of almost 13 million. Next slide. Okay. So here's the a comparative, essentially condensed income statement for the general fund. You'll see that revenues did increase by about 6 million, while expenditures also increased. So revenues over expenditures of $12 million in the general fund this year. But $9 million of that was transferred out of the general fund to other funds, and mainly those transfers were to the city debt service fund for 1.1 million, the capital improvement fund for 5.7 million, and the state gas tax fund for 2.4 million. Next slide. Okay, one more. All right, so just like to point out just a couple of ratios and a couple numbers for you. Some things that we sort of look at. I mentioned earlier the net cost of services and pointed that number out for the governmental activities. That net cost of services this year was actually almost $30 million. So what this shows, and again, that net cost of services is calculated as the charges for services and operating and capital grants minus the total expenses. So in this case, a ratio above 100% is good and means that tax revenues are sufficient to cover the net cost of providing services without dipping into net position or relying on investment earnings or miscellaneous income. Now, you see that there's a huge change between 2022 and 2023. And in 2022, because of realizing essentially investment earnings for CalPERS, the city in 2022 actually saw a pension income, or essentially a negative pension expense. And in 2023, the city's pension expense was more in line with what we would expect to see typically. So even though 2023 saw a healthy increase in tax revenues, the ratio dipped drastically, mainly because of that effect of the pension expense and the differences in that between the 2 years. Next slide. So this slide is again referring to the general fund, and this is the ratio of unassigned fund balance. So unassigned is essentially has no strings attached to it to annual expenditures. And so in 2023, the unassigned fund balance was almost 13 million, and annual expenditures in the general fund were 14.4 million. So that ratio is almost 90%. And so what that means is essentially sitting in unassigned fund balance, you have about 90% of your annual expenditures. So that's a very healthy unassigned fund balance amount to have. That unassigned fund balance has gone up significantly over the past 5-6 years. It was about 5 million in 2021, 9.5 million last year, and it's up to 13 million in 2023. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is just, I mentioned earlier that some of the numbers in the city's financial statements are subject to estimate, and one of the main ones on that is related to actuarial inputs into the calculation of the city's net pension liability. So what this chart shows is that we use a 6.9, or CalPERS uses a 6.9% discount rate to measure the city's pension liability. And all things being equal, if that rate were to change plus or minus 1%, this chart shows you what you would be looking at. So, for instance, this year the total net pension liability is $4.5 million, measured at a discount rate of 6.9%. If that discount rate did change to 5.9%, say, that liability would, again, all things being equal, jump up to over $15 million. And in the opposite scenario, but CalPERS isn't going to be raising the discount rate anytime soon, but the net pension liability would swing into an actual asset, which is basically what we are showing, as compared to last year. So this year, where we sit right now, both the miscellaneous and safety plan are about 94% funded, which is great. However, last year the plan was overfunded, and that was due to some of the additional contributions that the city made via the proceeds of their 2018 certificates of participation. And so last year the city actually had a net pension asset, but due to some poor CalPERS investment returns in 2022, the liability swung back into the liability side. Next slide. So this is basically a similar slide. Just this is for OPEB. Again, actuarial inputs can have a large impact on the swing. You're seeing it's a little bit less on the OPEB side, but the city's liability would jump from $594,000 to $852,000 if that discount rate were to be dropped. And the discount rates used in the calculation of the OPEB liability can move and are subject to move more than say the CalPERS discount rates. However, essentially the funded ratio of the city's plan is 72%, which is actually really good, really high compared to what we see for a lot of our other clients as far as the OPEB goes. But it is down a tad. Last year was almost 80%. All right, as far as we can skip to the next slide. And then one more. So here are the audit results. So as far as opinions that we provided an unmodified opinion to all opinion units. And what that means is we do have several different opinion units for these financial statements. There's the governmental activities on their own. There's the business type activities on their own. And then each major fund within the financial statement is also considered an opinion unit, and then basically everything else. So we did issue unmodified opinions to all of them. And what that means is that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. The accounting policies have been consistently applied, estimates used are reasonable, and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. Next slide. As far as other results, I know I mentioned this already, but we had no disagreements with management. We also noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting or compliance. We noted no accounting issues, and no inappropriate activities were noted. So with that will conclude my presentation, and I will open it up to questions if there are any.
Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and start to see if there's any council discussions. I'll go with Doc, and we'll move to the left.
I have none, other than good job on, I like hearing that we're in a healthy position overall and no discrepancy, so.
I don't have any comments. Again, we've now 3 years of experience reading these. We get better and better at them. I actually offered some commentary in the Finance Committee about just small stuff, but nothing that was relative to the actual audit. I want to make sure the city citizens understand that this financial statement is as of the end of June 30th, 2023, which means that anything related to Measure P only had 1 quarter of impact. And so that's an important thing to understand in this. And the second is, as it was discussed, we came out of the post-COVID ready to get work done, and Public Works got a lot of work done in the fiscal year, which obviously was the big offset. He said pension. I was thinking it was more Public Works, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of Measure V reserves.
Measure V work, right? Yeah. Okay. I have nothing else.
I don't have any questions. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no questions. Thank you for the hard work.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you very much, Sri.
Thank you, Coley.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, we will move forward with our regular agenda now. Our next item is our public comments. Public comments. Oh, I gotta get I lost my red sheet of paper. She messed me up. I don't have my script to read. Public comments are any member of the public may make a public comment. No public comment may last more than 5 minutes. The total public comment time will be 60 minutes. Each public commenter is asked to state their name for the record. Is there any public comment from the floor?
This is on items not on the agenda.
An item's not on the agenda. See, I knew I was missing the sentence.
Here you go, Mr. Wakely.
Okay. That's not on the agenda.
Good evening, esteemed council. I'm here to tell you about RidgeCon Fantasy Festival, an event that we're having at the fairgrounds May 4th from 10 to 5. We're putting this on for our community. It's going to be a great event. There's going to be a cosplay contest. The Society of Creative Anachronism is going to be there in full force. There's going to be knights fighting. There's going to be a rapier tournament, vendors, and all kinds of fun stuff for kids. We have a performer coming from Kansas City, Martika Daniels. She's an inspirational speaker, a fire eater, a hula hoop dancer with barbed wire. She cuts vegetables on her arms, all kinds of crazy stuff. Fistful of Cards will be taking over Joshua Hall. They'll be doing tabletop gaming. It'll be Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars cards, Pokemon tournament, and Nintendo gaming. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Are you wearing that all day?
Oh, no, not all day. No. Just for you guys. I might at the event, though. And by the way, this is also a fundraiser for our fairgrounds. So it's run by Friends of the Fair. All money will be going to the fairgrounds to help maintain and grow the fairgrounds for more community events.
Well, I'll go ahead and say it. Again, one of the things that we've been focused on is trying to diversify and bring more events to the community. What is the one thing that everyone loves to say, there's nothing to do in Ridgecrest, and I always remind them, then you aren't trying very hard, because there's plenty to do in Ridgecrest. But bringing in new environments and bringing in things that are different, we think is important. I commend Nick and the Friends of the Fair for the inspiration on this, and I hope the community will come out and join them. It should be very interesting, especially if you happen to be in that sci-fi fantasy mindset. It'll be fun. And for the record, it's very possible you'll see the mayor in a senator outfit from a galaxy far, far away playing Star Wars cards with his kids, because, again, I enjoy this element as well. So thank you to the Friends of the Fair and for all your group that's working together on it.
Awesome. Thank you, council.
Say, Nick, before you take off, would you just, a real quick date, time, and then how people can get involved if they want to get involved, be a part of things?
So one more time, this is May 4th. May the 4th be with you, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you can find out more by going to Facebook or Instagram and checking out RidgeCon Fantasy Festival, and that's where you can get tickets. Tickets will be $20 at the door. Unless you're dressed up in Renaissance or Fantasy Festival wear, it'll be $15.
Nice. Thank you. You look good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, I'm Robert Blackwell, and I come here by maybe once a month to update the community and the council on the issues about our local Quaisu tribe. First thing I want to mention, in a very positive manner, that recently we put a request into the Ridgecrest Visitors Bureau about there was a lot of materials and products for sale in their gift shop that appeared to be native, but they were not made by natives, and we let them know we objected to that, and we found out last night that they have agreed with us, and they're going to be removing it all. And in the future, the gifts that are offered that appear to be native will be made by natives. And that's a very, very significant point for our native community, because for one thing, there's a federal statute that makes it a law You can't be selling things that appear to be native that are not. But we just want to thank Cary, their board, and that we're also working with them on revitalizing next year's Petroglyph Festival to make it more authentic and make it more educational, focusing on the natives, their lives, and particularly their lives in this community for the last couple thousand years. So it's very, very exciting for the Kauai Sioux to be treated with that type of respect from the Visitors Bureau, and we're just absolutely thrilled to be working with them throughout next year. The second issue I just want to mention, as you all know, the tribe objects to one of the council members being involved in any issues that may come before the council related to the Kauai Sioux and their art and the art that's displayed on the city streets. We have been going through an investigation and discovery period, and I just want to let the council know that it was indicated to us that Council Gorman claimed that he did not receive any monies, any taxpayer monies. We now have documentation that indicates that just for one piece of art, he received over $8,200. And there's 50 or 60 pieces of art. We're still trying to figure out who paid for those. So we're trying to figure it out, because as we figure out the history of the art, we'll know how to deal with it and what we do, whether it's through Caltrans, through the city. We're working on it, and it's an ongoing process. But the investigation is continuing. We're gathering more information, and we'll just keep you guys involved. It's one of these longer-term issues, because right now there is nothing before the city council related to the Kauai Sioux formally, but there may be, and when that time comes, we want to be treated fairly, and we want the council members who may rule on any of our issues not to have had a financial interest in any of the Kauai Sioux issues. The last thing I want to announce is on April 19th, the tribe will have an all-day protest about the art down the city streets. It'll start early. It'll start in front of the Navy base. It will involve public property, and it'll also be all day, but the focus will be the night on Balsam. We're going to have 2 tables. One table will be just a pure informational table about the tribe and what it's doing today. But we're also going to have a table that talks about the really horrible history of how the Kauai Sioux have been treated in this community over the last 175 years. Some of the history is extremely unpleasant, but we believe that it's important for the people in the community to understand what the local natives have been, how they've been treated, and it'll give them a better understanding of why they feel so strongly about some of the issues that they face. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment from the floor? Is there any public comment on the phones? Okay, given it just a moment. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move forward with council announcements and direction. Mr. Blades.
So if you'll let me go last, I'm looking for a couple of
10-4,
slides.
I'll let Mr. Heyman go.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No comments.
I don't have any comments other than thanks for coming out and entertaining us, Nick, with your costume, and obviously wanted to wish everyone a very happy Easter. That we met, we're meeting just after. We didn't get a chance to say it at the last meeting. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter. And then finally, wanted to send my congratulations to, once again, Saracosa College. They'll be celebrating they have a 50th anniversary dinner for their Denim and Diamonds this Saturday night, which is a great opportunity to celebrate. And they have their original president, Richard I know it's Richard, but I can't remember the rest of it right off the top of my tongue. Sorry about that, Sean. Who will be coming out, and it should be a wonderful evening to get to see and be a part of the 50th anniversary of Cerro Cosa, which is an important resource. I'll pass it to Solomon.
Saturday, I attended the Respect for Law dinner. It was awesome to see all of our law enforcement officers and the officers who received the awards. Congratulations, especially from our RPD officer, Jeremiah Lloyd. A special congratulations to him. So thank you very much for what you do for our community, putting your lives online and making this community a great place to live. Thank you.
And Ms. Blades.
Yep, I have two items. The first one is more informational, and the second one is a more solemn note, just something that's affected a family in the community. I wanted to make sure I paid it respect on this sort of a venue. So we had somebody here to speak to it. It looks like he had to step out. I saw him get on the phone. That is the Field Day. So that's the Amateur Radio Field Day 2024. And I'll try to breeze through this real quick. I won't read everything. But it's going to be held the fourth weekend in June. So that's June 22nd to the 23rd from 10 to 10. And they're going to be taken up Freedom Park. It's the largest annual amateur radio event, participation across the United States and Canada. It involves a lot of entities. It's an enormous event. And I'm just bringing awareness for the club, but also for the community. When emergencies happen, you need the amateur radio guys more than you think. Right, Sergeant? Yep. Cool. So it'll be a practice of emergency response, public service events, practicing weather events, public service events, and working through in a practical exercise. So I won't dig too much further into it there. Council, I sent you these slides that I was sent from the club, just so you have an awareness of the same information that I do. City manager is already aware, as well as Narissa, Parks and Rec director. The second one is a more solemn note, but just a message of respect. I had the privilege of attending a funeral. I do mean that as a privilege, attending a funeral last week for Lieutenant Colonel Scott Fleury. Him and his family, they were Ridgecrest natives. Their roots go deep into the community, and it was a huge blow. He left behind. He's survived by 4 young daughters and his wife, which is a close personal friend of mine. The reason I bring it up is so we could never forget about the mission of that base, the things that we do. It all ties together for me. We don't just care. And if you work on that base, you hear it said a million times a day. We're here for the mission. We're here for the mission. But really, it comes down to these Marines, these sailors, and some of our programs branch out into every other branch, the Army. So I want to make sure that I took this moment to make a personal note for the family from this, at least from my seat, not to speak for you guys. And then I appreciate the honor of being able to attend the funeral and pay respects.
I'll be honest, anytime I hear a father with 4 kids, it's just heartbreaking. And so our condolences to that family, and thank you for your service, more above everything else, to this community, and for your family sacrifice. Thank you for that, Kyle. Next, we'll move on to our consent calendar. All items listed on consent are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff. Consent items may be approved by one motion if no member of council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public or the council concerning the item before action is taken. I'll now read the 3 consent items. Item number 1 is the proposed action to approve the draft minutes of the Ridgecrest City Council regular meeting dated March 20th, 2024. Second item is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest authorizing the update and implementation of the Ridgecrest Transit Title 6 plan for 2024. And number 3 is a resolution of the Ridgecrest City Council to deny the base bid as submitted by all contractors for the Emergency Response Crack Fill Project, Federal Project ER 5383. Is there any member of the public which wishes to have an item pulled? Is there any member of the council who wishes to have an item pulled? Hearing none, do I have a motion for the approval of the consent calendar as presented?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Heyman,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Next item is item number 5. Item number 5 is a resolution of the Ridgecrest City Council to accept the base bid as submitted by CLC Construction Incorporated in the amount of $66,540 and no cents, and up to 15% contingency in the amount of $99,800 81, and authorize the city manager, Ron Strand, to execute the contract. Parks and Rec.
Good evening,
Narissa and-
council.
Oh, it's the tag team, okay.
Good evening, council. I am here tonight to ask council to approve the awarding of the splash pad drainage correction. As you all know, every summer, the splash pad's used a lot, and so we have noticed that the drainage that was installed originally isn't working well enough to alleviate puddling. It attracts massive wasps, bees. We've also had pumps and stuff go out, we think could be because of debris piling up and getting into the filtration system. So we did put this project out to bid, and so I'm asking council to accept the base bid as submitted by CLC Construction, Inc. in the amount of $66,540, sorry. 15% with a 15% contingency in the amount of $9,981. And to authorize the city manager, Ronald Strand, to execute the contract. With that, I'm open for any questions.
I'll just chime in there and say, as the guy who has walked through the splash pad and slipped on the splash pad, yes, please and thank you.
No comments from me. Yeah.
Okay, this is very easy. This is one that's good for our kids and for the citizens. The wasp issue really was a problem last year, and I think after this summer, we're gonna have more.
100% agree with
Yeah.
Especially with the wet winter that we've had.
Yeah, it's gonna be,
Way worse.
it's gonna be icky. Is there any member of the public which has a comment? Nope. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and bring it back to council. Do I have a motion for approval of the resolution as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second, I have a roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Hayman,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
And I think you can just stay there because we're going to move on to item number 6 in the interim, which is the new agenda item. And I'm going to go and read the resolution for the record. Item number 6, this is the emergency item which we added to the agenda prior to our closed session. Item number 6 is a resolution of the Ridgecrest City Council to accept the base bid as submitted by CLC Construction Incorporated in the amount of...
No.
Nope, that's the wrong one.
I was like, what?
Notice I stopped. Notice I stopped because I had it, I pulled it out. I have it right here. I did that. Okay, this is item number 6. Item number 6 is the proposed approval of increased appropriations to the fiscal year 2024 budget for an emergency well repair in Freedom Park. I'll let Nurse go.
So, as you can see in the staff report, our well went down in Freedom Park. We did troubleshoot, tried to figure out what the problem was. We started noticing low water pressure when the sprinklers were on. We found that a valve was bad, replaced it. Within 15 minutes of it running what appeared to be normal, we started getting the same exact issue pop up. And so staff then contacted a well company. They came out, they pulled the well video down in there and found that the lining of the well was rusted out, falling apart. The well is 350 feet deep. We currently are only seeing 300 feet because 50 feet of that is sand that's in there. So the well company will come out and remove that sand, reline the well. It has been brought up that there is a possibility that the well has collapsed down in there. And if that is the case, the well company will stop work and discuss with myself and Travis what the next course would be of action. And with that, staff spoke with the well company. Travis asked them to kind of break down the work so that when we do stop, if we have to, we know kind of where we're at financially with it. And basically, they gave us a breakdown of 25% of that will include, of the cost will include the equipment setup, tool fabrication, mobilization, and demobilization. And then 25% is phase 1, 40% would be phase 2, and then phase 3 is 10%. And in good faith, if the well is collapsed, they will be offering a credit equivalent to 50% of the spent portion of what we had already done in order for them to conduct drilling of a new well. So what I'm asking from council is to approve the cost so that we can get this well fixed, as it hasn't been running for 2 weeks now. It is going to start to get hot, and we don't want to lose the grass. And with that, we're open for any questions.
I'm going to just start with the one, just to make sure I clarify. So the 150,000 that we are just budgetarily giving you authority on, that's what we're really doing, because we don't have a physical number yet.
So we have an estimate of 125,000. The 150,000 includes a
The contingency.
20% contingency on it. So that cost is to line the well, or reline it. And the cost could change if the well is collapsed.
So if it's collapsed, then the relining can't happen, and we have to go back and we have to drill,
And we'll come
essentially.
back to you guys for,
Yes and no, depends. So we're going down, we're looking at where we have sand at 350 feet, right? The well's 350 feet, we've got 50 foot of fill within the well. We're gonna try to bail, airlift, tree pipe, get all that out. We'll re-video the well, we'll see what the inside of the well looks like. If the well has issues, we have other options that we can do, such as swedging the well. You can swedge off a section. We can plug a section. You can fill the bottom. If we've got a cave-in at 320, you can plug, put a concrete fill up to 310. We have multiple different things that we can do and pursue. But what we have right now is what we assume to be the ideal world of how this thing needs to get fixed. AKA, we bail it out. We don't have much issues. It's just time. Perfs have gotten enlarged from corrosion, and it's allowing sand intrusion, and we're just gonna put a new liner in, put new gravel pack in, develop this well, and then stick our new pump in and move on with life. That's how the quote is right now, and that's why we asked them to itemize it, so that way we can see where we're at. And we did our best guess based on what we think the worst case would be. If it is collapsed and it's not a re-drill situation, we feel we have enough here to cover the majority of what we need to do, since the major components are already included in the estimate, which is new pump, new
Liner and then.
pump line, new liner, new gravel pack, things like that.
So my concern goes is as this is where my concern goes, and it's not about, all that makes perfect sense. All those. It's the time between diagnosis and treatment. Okay? So once we have the diagnosis, if the treatment can't be remedied with a pill, and we have to go to cancer treatment, okay? How much time is going to get lost in that interim time that we need to give you? Are we gonna need to call a special meeting if that's the case? I'm just trying to make sure I understand our
I think
next steps in
yeah.
terms of direction.
I think if
That's all
worst
I'm trying to
case-
do.
Worst case happens where we feel we need to go drill a new well. Once we have an idea of where we can put it, how we're gonna make it work with our existing system, we would either try to make it, if it timed out great with a regular meeting, great. If not, I think we would try to call a special
Okay,
meeting
and
so we
that's-
can keep this moving.
That's all I'm trying to clarify, because I don't wanna have another emergency one come up if we know that we don't need to. The city attorney's trying to. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, we're on the same page. We need to get the well fixed and the grass watered. So if it turns out that we have to re-drill that well, we're gonna have to find a way of watering that grass because
There's other ways we can do it. We can get rain for rent pipe, use an air gap to fill that pressure vessel and feed it from the Indian Wells Valley Water District system too. There's multiple ways we
Okay.
can skin that cat to keep the
Okay,
grass going.
10-4. I just
So
was
we
making
can
sure
figure
that-
that out as we get to it.
And does this give you enough leeway that if you had to make those emergency decisions, you have authority in place to make those decisions at the cost basis that we're here? I'm not talking about the drilling. I'm talking about he comes up with some weird airbag system to drive water, and you need an extra 20 grand, this is gonna be
So,
enough.
what do you estimate the total cost if we have to drill a new well?
I honestly been out of that game so long, I couldn't tell you right now. I'd have to do some research. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head because I wouldn't know how deep we would need to go for future. I would need to do a little more research on that before I threw a number out.
But it's
But,
like so much per feet usually, right?
you know, to be honest with you, Kyle, for ag wells and shallower wells like this, I honestly don't know how they price it because I've been used
Yeah.
to big production wells where we're going 1,000, 1,200 feet deep
Yeah.
at a much bigger diameter. So there's a little bit more that goes into that.
Sure.
So I honestly couldn't tell you about ag wells, how the drilling of them work. I'd have to do some research.
That's
Yep,
great.
No worries, no worries.
And I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just trying to make sure that you have the tools in your toolbox to go do it.
To execute as quick as you can.
That's all I'm worried about. My concern here is not the dollars, quote unquote, we always worried about dollars, but right now it's the time that I don't want you to have. Here, I got this handcuff released, and I forgot to take this one off, and then I'm back here trying to get the key for that one so we can push forward.
I mean, like I said, we got a liner, we got stuff like that. I can't imagine that a concrete plug would be that much more. I mean, if we start bailing down and find out that we can't get the well to any sand to bail down, that every time we take a bail out, it fills back up, obviously the wells collapse. You put a concrete plug in the bottom, we move on, we shorten our liner. You make up some money for the liner now because you're not using 50 feet of the liner, right? So I feel like we have a
You
decent
feel like
amount
you've
of
got enough
wiggle
room
room
to
there.
maneuver, and if we need to, then it would be a special. Okay.
Yep.
Then I've answered my questions. I'll let Dr. Solomon.
And so, just so I'm clear on it, the cause of the well failure has not been affirmed yet?
I personally think it's just an age thing. The wells here have been very, when we have a problem, we pull them. We don't do very much proactive maintenance to better check and see, hey, are we gonna have a problem with this well this summer? Which is something I think we should seriously consider in the future. I know when I was at the water district, they were throwing around pulling 2 wells a year. I don't know what they do now as I've been gone for a while, but I know they're pretty active in pulling wells because it's a lot cheaper to maintain a well than it is to fix one when it goes down.
Sorry, but I want to say, for the public, it's very clear, this has not had servicing for 10 years, and it's 10 years almost, it's, what is it, 12 years almost to the date since RDA and all of the budget crisis that we got hit with. This is the impact of all that crap now 10 years later.
And so when in regards to drilling a new well versus drilling, deepening or relining an existing well, I've heard it stated that a lot of times it's better to not dump money into that failed well and to go ahead and drill a new well. And how much money would we have invested in it, or would we make that decision prior?
That's why we
So
had
that's the
them.
2 options we have,
Yeah,
and then start putting money into the well, or
So when we got the original estimate, it was a lump sum. Here's the things we're gonna do, 125 grand. And that was when I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. We need to get a breakdown of what you're gonna do and what those costs are gonna be per line item. So that way, we can make an educated decision on, hey, you've been out here bailing this well for 2 days, and we know what the cost of this is, and we're not getting anywhere. We need to regroup and go to Plan B, and we need to either go to a cap or however we need to do this, right? So that's why we wanted to have strategic places that we could stop them and say, hey, okay, hold up. We're gonna go to Plan B. We're gonna discuss internally what we wanna do, and then whether or not, hey, we wanna put our new liner in at 300 feet and run the well and go, or do we want to test pump it and make sure that 300 feet we don't have significant drawdown, that most of our water was coming from the bottom 50 feet? How do we want to proceed to do this so we're not spending bad money chasing something good, right?
Right.
I want to make educated decisions along the way.
right. And I guess my concern is, the reliability in the long run of, the patched well versus the new well, and money invested and in that end game. I understand that need to, to get water, moving quick, you know what I mean? And so I think you got a good grasp on it, and that's just some of my concerns is to.
I think right now we're headed in the right direction just because we do have a larger well casing there right now to where we can still line the well. And when we put in, the pump doesn't, it's not that big of a well where it's pulling giant gallons a minute to where when you shrink the casing, you see loss in what we call specific gravity or production of the well, right? This is still allowing it to fit the same pump, still allowing to fit the same style pump curve. So I think we're headed in the right direction right now.
And do we know at this point what the chronic lowering of the groundwater table has been on that well?
No, there was
the
no, this
history.
well, as it was submersible, there's usually not ways to sound submersibles, especially ones that were drilled and put in back in that day and age. Sounding and seeing water levels back then was not very common. That is something we could look at maybe putting a port on for sounding it, if that's something council would like us to do. But right now, I forget, you said it was at 160, is that where static groundwater was?
Yeah.
So we still, even if we have to plug it at 350 and you set the pump down at 280, you still have a decent chunk of water over the top of it. So I still think there's life in this well for us to use, so.
I think you have a great grasp of it, and I'm good with it.
I was just gonna ask some boneheaded questions real quick. And that's, I didn't see anything about replacing the actual well pump, maybe I just missed it. Just replacing pipe, is it in there?
No, it's a new pump.
It is gonna be a new pump? I just
Yeah,
didn't see
so
it.
the pump and motor, this is a submersible, so it's all
Yeah.
housed in one.
Oh, okay.
So,
Cool. And the reason I bring that up is it was sort of a leading question. We've seen where production wasn't always great, I think, on that well, and you had issues with watering in the past just because you didn't have enough production into the tank. So I'm wondering if this is going to help improve those times. I don't know. It's all speculation, but
it absolutely could, because I don't know that did we have an accurate way to measure what production that well was getting
I
before then?
don't think so.
That might be something we look at and see if there's a way that we can add a meter. I haven't had a chance to actually physically go out and
Sure.
look at the physical lay of the land out there with it. But that's something that if we don't end up burning all that contingency, to look at doing about mounting a flow meter in there.
yeah, I just know you guys have been working hard to keep grass. I mean, you're fixing grass all over the entire city. Freedom Park's no different. Those watering times I know have been issues in the past, so maybe if we can remedy two things at once. Thanks.
The only other thing I was gonna say is I'm gonna echo what you said, Mr. Reed. If we have the opportunity to acquire data,
Yeah.
Yes.
Always good.
acquire it.
data, I agree.
Okay.
Spoken like a true.
Think about it, and we happen to be in a 8-year water process already. I want more data, not less data. And the more data that we have, the better it is for every argument, so.
Sorry, Narissa, for causing you more trouble.
You're fine.
So,
In that case, if we're gonna be adding a sounding port and might be doing some other stuff, can we ask for a 30% contingency in lieu of the 20, please?
I think that's a good idea, personally.
I'm in favor of that, to get the data.
Ron,
Thank you.
You good? You good?
You good? Okay. That's all the council comments. Is there any comments from the public? I don't see any on the phone. Giving it a second, flashing the yellow lights. So do I have a motion to approve the
Mayor, if I may, before we proceed, that would require an amendment to the resolution for the total amount of 168, something?
No, 165.
165.
162.50.
162.50,
That's
okay.
30% of 125.
Is your 36, okay. I was gonna do the math in my head, but with the 30, I was saying.
But I'll take 165 if you'll give it.
I mean, I'll see.
Okay.
Going once, going twice.
So do I have a motion for the approval of the proposed increased appropriations fiscal year 2024 budget for emergency well repair in Freedom Park with a 30% contingency and a total fiscal impact of 162.5?
Yes, I make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Hayman,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
So now do we have to go through the introduce and title only motion?
We have to do it. That's the next item. The next item is item number 8, or item number 7, which is the introduction. I don't know why she has that. That's from my scripting, so.
Right.
It's interesting. The next item on our agenda is the introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the Ridgecrest City Council, amending the Ridgecrest Municipal Code, Chapter 106 zoning regarding residential care homes and employee housing, and finding that the amendment of the zoning code is not subject to environmental review under CEQA. I'm guessing this is Ms. Spurlock.
Yes. Riley, are you going to do the slides? Thank you. Okay, so what I have tonight is some more updates to our zoning code. All of these updates are in regards to changes in the California Government Code. So we're updating for employee housing, emergency shelters, and residential care facilities. All of these changes are required for approval of our housing element. So there'll be goals in our housing element when it's approved, but I'm moving forward to get them done now. This already went to Planning Commission last month, and they did approve the recommendation to City Council for these updates. Next slide. The first update is adding definitions for employee housing, residential care home, and single-room occupancy. These are all new items to our code. Next slide. So what the California law requires is in the single-family residential, a permitted use for employee housing for 6 or fewer, and for residential care homes for 6 or fewer. Permitted uses mean it's a by right, so they don't come to any public hearings for any approval. There is a conditional use added for residential care homes for 7 to 14 people, and those would require a public hearing and a planning commission for approval of those. Next slide. In the multifamily districts, the permitted uses increase for, we add employee housing, the residential care homes, single-room occupancy, supportive housing, and transitional housing. The supportive housing and transitional housing, those definitions were added last year previously, so those are already in the code. So they're not new, we're just assigning the uses and where they're allowed now. And then a conditional use again for the residential care homes for 7 to 14. Next slide. We're also adding parking requirements for the emergency shelters, which are already permitted use in our R3. But we're adding the parking requirements because that was not in our code. And we're adding parking requirements for the supportive housing, transitional housing, and the single-room occupancy units. Next slide. So this item is not subject to CEQA. Any project that would come would get its own individual CEQA. This is just setting up the rules, so it's not subject to CEQA. Next slide. So what we're asking tonight is that you make the determination that it's not subject to CEQA, pursuant to the code sections that are in our staff report, and then the waiving of reading in full and the introduction by title only. If you guys have any questions?
I do not, other than I just want to, again, thank you for working to get our codes more up to date. I mean, I know that one of the things that I don't think people appreciate is this is mundane, and people go, well, yeah, this is so much fun, but guys, you know, the state is changing laws on us every single day, and so we as a city have a responsibility to implement those laws. We as a council may disagree with many of the laws, but that doesn't allow us to just thumb our nose at them. I can think of more than a few laws that we are dealing with as a public sector, from CEQA to Sigma to Cow Recycle to take your pick, Prop 47. Let's do a lottery. We can just spin a wheel and see which law we don't like right now. But the simple fact is that to the citizens, we have an obligation to implement state law as a city. I don't want to sometimes, but this is fairly mundane. This is just redefining certain areas. And so I have no other comments other than to thank our departments for continuing to keep our laws up to date. Mr. Chairman.
Concur. No further comments.
Anything, sir?
Oh, nothing. To mirror Eric Bruin's comments, even when I was on the planning commission, sorry I left you, Heather. You're always working hard to clean things up. You've made such a concerted effort just in the short time that I've been around doing the city to get things squared away, to keep the city up to date and clean it up. And I appreciate your leadership and all of everything you've contributed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So with that, I will take any public comment. Seeing none, give it a second. Flashing red lights. Bring it on back. I would entertain a motion to introduce by title only an ordinance of the Ridgecrest City Council amending the Ridgecrest Municipal Code, Chapter 106 for zoning regarding residential care homes and employee housing, and a finding that the amendment of the zoning code is not subject to environmental review under CEQA.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Heyman,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
And next would be, I would entertain a motion to waive reading in full of an ordinance of the Ridgecrest City Council amending the Ridgecrest Municipal Code, Chapter 106 zoning, regarding residential care homes and employee housing, and a finding that the amendment of the zoning code is not subject to environmental rule review under CEQA.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. Roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Aye.
Councilman Heyman,
Aye.
Councilman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Councilman Blades.
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll move into our committee reports. Committee reports, the first two have yet to meet. That would be Finance and RACVB. Infrastructure from the 28th.
Canceled as well.
Canceled as
We're
well,
gonna
I
have
thought
to
so.
set up a new, an emergency meeting, waiting on, whenever Public Works Director can get back to me. Yeah, same thing with the economic development was also canceled
Okay,
due to lack of quorum.
okay, got that. And then Parks and Rec did meet yesterday. Fairly, again, more of a update meeting than anything else. We discussed, the active projects that are currently in process, the Leroy Jackson Sports Complex renovations, some of the program numbers I wanted to share. Some of the program numbers were pretty interesting for our sports programs. I think it was 309 kids for our soccer program, 120 for basketball. We had 600 plus attend the first Movies in the Park. And thank you all to One for holding that event and doing the Easter egg hunt. We appreciate that community support. And then we have another Movies in the Park coming up on April 20th. And we discussed, just all the different things. The big thing that we spent a lot of time talking was, interestingly enough, was grass. And the budget items that Narissa intends to bring forward in the budget. We're talking a low end of 260,000 to a high end of 450,000, somewhere in that range. She's still figuring out the end points. This would allow us to do the fields at Leroy Jackson Park, the upper fields, the Armstrong fields, the fields at Kerr-McGee, and if available, the fields at Upjohn Park and Freedom, depending on how the water impact is on Freedom here over the next month with the well situation. It's about $100,000 in equipment and 2 staff resources that she's asked for. In the discussion, I kind of bumped the number up a little bit in our conversation because I was like, what about this and what about that and what about this and what about that? And so I would say, she's trying to keep it to, 260,000 in that range. That's based on 80,000 for 2 staff and 100,000 for equipment. But then she's going to need the seating and everything else, and that's probably another 100,000 in terms of material costs to make sure that we do it right. And so that'll be coming in the budget hearing. The other thing we talked about was, one of the ideas was to alter the proposed shade structure for the skate park to be more of a bleachers-based shade structure, similar to what we're doing at Kerr-McGee. And I would argue that the consensus amongst the committee was to not go forward with that, but to continue to go forward with a shade structure similar to what's at the splash pad that included sitting tables underneath a physical structure of shade. The largest reason for that was I can instantly see us pointing bleachers at the skate park and having 25 parents come over from football and say, why'd you point the bleachers at the damn skate park? Instantaneously. Where an open, if you want to sit and have a meal or you want to sit down, if there's kids who want to do schoolwork while they're waiting to get picked up, if there's other things, I think the table functionality is more readily proper for that area than bleachers. That was my consensus. That was my opinion, and the rest of the committee largely agreed. But did I cover that properly? Okay. The only other thing that is we talked about the splash pad, and we talked about, it looks like a couple of other projects will hopefully be done, which looks like we are on track to hopefully have the Kerr-McGee shades done by the end of May. And we're on track to have the splash pad hopefully completed by the end of May at the latest, hopefully mid-May, to get the splash pad open. And we are about 25% on the Clean California project, and our as-built bathroom looks to be coming here in around June. So those projects are all continuing to move forward. I don't think there's anything else from Quality of Life other than my, once again, begging anybody out there who likes to complain about what's going on with Parks and Recreation. The first step is come down and talk to us. We're here the first Tuesday of the month, and the the two people that were here, I thank you. Jackie was here, your staff member Jackie that left, and Bob from the baseball, and that was it. And then, you know, the next morning is, why is parks being torn up? Well, we said we were going to fix stuff, you know. You kind of wanted us to fix it. We're fixing it. So that was all. We'd love to have your opinions. The best ideas and some of these ideas that you're hearing us talk about all came out of citizen input at Quality of Life. I have nothing else for Quality of Life.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I add one thing that may not have come up at the meeting? We are fixing or improving that parking area to the west of the Kerr-McGee ball fields. There was a significant amount of grindings that had been laid out there, so we hired OnStot to grind the grindings further, and we put a layer of oil on them, so you're gonna have pretty much a parking lot on the west side. That should help considerably with people parking, being able to get to and from the ball fields, as well as reducing the amount of fugitive dust that we have come onto those ball fields and everything.
Great. Since we're having a conversation and it came from the committee meeting, and we love to surprise our city manager with stuff sometimes. Sure. You know, one of the discussion points that did happen was Narissa talking about the popularity of soccer and talking about the number of kids. And I said, you know, we know that we hope to get to a Measure P 2.0 project.
Sure.
At some time in 28, 29, maybe down that timeline. And I said, you know, is it time for us to start talking about soccer fields adjacent to Kerr-McGee in the area and land that we own to the west of Kerr-McGee ball fields? And it's interesting that you should mention the parking lot to the west of the Kerr-McGee ball fields, because we do own that land, and that might be an opportunity for us to accommodate what the challenges. We love that you guys are all out playing soccer. It's fantastic, but it's hard on grass. And so if we design a field that's meant for soccer, it's going to be a lot better than having Freedom Park torn up or having Leeward Jackson torn up or other areas torn up in the process. So I just want to let everyone know, we may be pie in the sky another 6 years from now, but it did come up, so we made sure that we, you know, started that conversation. You know, there's an expansion plan for Leeward Jackson in that soccer field, right? In the middle area? Well,
I think we're past the comment. I got Martin over here groaning in my ear here.
We're out of the report arena. That was report from the committee meeting. It absolutely was. So, but it was a fun conversation about the impact of soccer and really about what the quality of life needs are. So, next is other committees, boards, or commissions. I think.
Nothing really to report.
Yeah, another report. I will report that I met with the LAFCO CEO this morning. Had a really nice conversation with him, and I know that the appointment was completed, and I take that seat in May. We're continuing to work out some of the scheduling things, but the impact for the council may be that I may miss a couple meetings through the course of the year when I have to be present physically at LAFCO, because they are on the third Wednesday, and there's a direct conflict. We're going to try and see if we can use the Zoom rules as far as we can bend them without physically breaking them to you know, within the context of traveling between agencies. So, the only other one was just a announcement for the council and for interested parties. We have on May the 10th, the League of California Cities coming to visit here at the historic USO building. This brings all of the local governments for several different of our areas: Bishop, Victorville, Apple Valley, Palmdale, Lancaster, and they're going to be visiting us here, and just extending the invitation to our council members. We'd love to have you attend if you're able. It should be from like 10 to 2. I'll have some more details as soon as Rick is back from her vacation. She's helped me coordinate it for next week, and it's for May the 10th, which happens to be the same day as Saracosa's graduation, unfortunately. But
I have one quick question while we're talking about boards and other committees. Scott, was there anything that came out of that special meeting on the 29th? Anything that was in the public arena, not in closed session, that could be?
I don't recall anything real major, but I will, I do have my notes from it, and I will, I'll be on the scheduled report out on our next meeting. So I'll probably include that in with it. I'll go back through and look at any highlights and add that to it.
Roger, thanks.
Okay, hearing no other boards or commissions, city manager report?
I have nothing to add.
Future agenda items. Any future agenda items? I'm just gonna throw it on the table because I said I was interested in what they did. The language that Florida used in regards to squatters, I said was interesting. I don't know that it certainly applies in Ridgecrest, but if we have the ability to possibly just alter the definition of what tenant is, in a way, I said it's worth a legal, sniff around.
I think it's worth discussing and looking at. I think if we have a proactive police department that
Yes.
stays on top of things, but those situations can very easily get out of control.
Yeah, and is it just something where we alter our language just enough to give our officers and our owners and our property owners enough ability to do something? Hey, I don't know. Pie in the sky, guys. But I also want the community to hear, we pay attention to these things. We hear them, we see them, we taste them, we touch them. Some we can. We had a conversation recently about trying to put ordinance in place for the abandoned or unoccupied commercial properties. And everyone wants us to just put an ordinance that somehow takes people's property. We can't do that, guys. I love that you want us to do it, but we can't just walk over and say, it's unoccupied, take it back. We can potentially look at ordinances that have a hammer effect on condition of property and exterior appearance and those types of things, but we can't magically make somebody go do things.
Well, in my opinion, I think we have enough avenues.
We do too right now.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
it's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope, but it was a conversation that comes, they're advocating for this, and, you can't just wave a wand and just say, hey, you take it away from, that doesn't work that way, guys. You want a constitution that protects us, and we have a bunch of people comes in here that repeatedly reminds us of the strength of the Constitution, and then at the same time wants us to just bend the rules for whatever the crisis of the moment is. It doesn't work that way. Just a little public record. Next, mayor and council comments.
If I could go back to the future agenda items. real
Absolutely,
quick.
sir.
Maybe, so if you, council members, and then I could get with Rika when she gets back, or maybe if she's gonna be out a while. Within that slide presentation is basically a resolution in support of the Amateur Radio Club and for their event. I am by no means putting any kind of pressure on you guys or the staff, but if you look it over and just see if it looks reasonable, and we can add it to
A future meeting.
future meeting.
Yeah.
No specific date.
Happy to.
Just between now and the
I
event.
think they do some incredible stuff, and it's important.
I think so,
Yeah.
but just up to you guys, up to the staff, really.
Okay. Any other future agenda items before I move forward? No? Okay. Mayor and council comments. I'm going to let Mr. Blades be the first.
No comments.
Mr. Archibald. Doc?
So I hate to end the meeting on a dark, somber moment, but, so April 9th to April 17th, 1942, coining different terms, but the Bataan Death March or Death March of Bataan occurred.
Yeah.
This was part of World War II in the Pacific Theater. There was a battle in the Philippines. The American troops were battling the Japanese at the time, and so they were highly outnumbered and highly outsupplied. The Americans were, and so in a nutshell, what happened was a higher commanding field general decided that they would surrender and lay their arms down. Meetings occurred with the Japanese officers to ensure the safety of the men. Hours later, 75,000 American troops and Filipino troops were marched 65 miles out of Bagak and Mariveles to the prison camp, which was O'Connell. And of that 75,000, tens of thousands died if they were given no food or water and forced to march 65 miles. And so if they collapsed, they were shot. Those that did survive made it to an even more hostile environment at Camp O'Connell. The last couple legs of the journey, many of the men were shoved into crates and forced in so deep and tight that even those that died with, again, no food or water, couldn't even fall. I mean, it was a pretty horrendous situation. 1,700 of those men were on a ship, cargo ship of the Japanese, and were being taken on the final leg, and they were horribly, the vessel was found by one of our own torpedoes, I believe torpedo sub, and was engaged and sunk. And so of the 1,700 American and Filipino soldiers on that ship, I think 5 might have survived, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to be held to that number, but I believe it was only 5 that survived. Very few of these men or women are around anymore, but it's just, I read it, I was kind of set back by it, the magnitude of it. I think it's the largest loss of military in the, at sea, with the 1,700 that was lost in one fell swoop. But anyway, we don't want to forget, you know, these prior actions and things that have happened in our lives. But and I just want to honor those. And I know it's coming up probably next week, but honor those men and women that fought in World War II. And there were, you know, you hear about D-Day. It was horrible. This Bataan situation was horrible. But anyway, good comes, you know, I guess you could say at the end. But anyway, that's all I have. So if you want some interesting history, it is kind of hard to read and swallow, but it is interesting. So thank you.
Freedom always comes with a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's just a simple statement that we never quite remember, especially for our younger generations, but freedom has a cost, and it required a sacrifice. That is a somber note, so I'll try a little bit more bright at the very end. No, I'm just a little bit. I can't do a whole lot, but I wanted to remind the community that there are a series of meetings that are going to be starting here regarding the East Kern Healthcare District. Those are town hall sessions to allow you to get some information on the process that the hospital is trying to work through on the annexation of that district to a larger boundary. That is an important step. I don't know that the public fully understands, but public and private dollars and how they move around, I've had 6 weeks of education on how they can't move around. And one of the biggest ways to get them to move around is to have proper districts set up. And this is an opportunity, I think, for our community to potentially establish that for the future. So I would encourage citizen participation in those town halls. The other one is I wanted to just reiterate to the community, you've seen a couple articles and some communication. The city of Ridgecrest, the Navy, and all parties remain working diligently with the hospital on resolving some of the issues. I can just tell you, we've put more hours in on hospital over the last 6 weeks than I have in many, many other areas. And there's a lot of work being done. And I promise the citizens it's all being done first and foremost in the thought process of ensuring and protecting health care for this community. And so I promise you that is the number one agenda item. Second, I wanted to remind everyone that I understand you're getting frustrated with construction at the park and construction on the street and construction here and construction there. Please take your chill pill. It's going to be that way for a year. It's not going to suddenly disappear tomorrow. We have slated projects all the way through 26. And I've said before, we were going to build, we were going to invest. The citizens support us with Measure P to do that. We're going to do that. And then, you know, that means the pool, that means the roads, that means the parks, and that means all these other things from splash pad repairs to well repairs. If we need to get it fixed for this community, we're going to get it fixed. And that is going to mean some inconvenience. But Carmageddon is almost at an end, okay? Guys, it's almost at an end. The fact they're letting you drive through and the fact that they've gotten through the pipes and you see the big pipes have already been pulled out. And we have an event on April 19th. And I'm pretty confident that Jen Ricketts and the entire administration team will kill Travis if it is not properly ready on April 19th to house people for a night on Balsam. So just want to make sure that I'm pretty sure he will suffer the slings and arrows of the ladies if that is the case. And then my final uplifting moment was I just wanted to encourage citizens and thank them for their input for the banners. If you haven't seen the new banners down Ridgecrest Boulevard and up Balsam, they are a beautiful addition celebrating the 60th anniversary of our community. But more importantly, they really bring back that small town flair and that community involvement. Thank you to Megan McKenzie for taking the phone call, then doing the investigation, and then getting the business members involved. It's a beautiful, nice little touch. And if you go down and you look at what's going on from the roads to Balsam to Leroy Jackson, these all seem like little things, but they are all about creating that quality of life environment that we all want to make Ridgecrest healthy, growing, and a bright future. So with that, I wish you guys all a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again on the 17th. Good night.